What is up, y'all? Welcome back to another Fish the Moment live stream. Today, I'm flying solo while Randy's at the Bassmaster Open on Lay Lake. And because we're doing a solo stream, just you and me, I wanted to cover a topic that I thought would be really interesting to discuss by myself and then have Randy talk about after he returns from the Open to get his perspective as well. And that is, what are some of the reasons why professional anglers like a Jacob Wheeler or a Jordan Lee are so much better than the average weekend anglers? And more than just saying, they fish more, they have more experience, what are some actual things that you guys can do to improve your fishing based on some of the skills that I've seen from fishing with professional anglers, being around them, and watching a lot of TV shows? And I've identified 5 different things that pro anglers do that most weekend anglers don't do that you can actually learn and apply to your fishing within 6 months. And I'll kind of talk about how you can go about learning these skills, what the process would be like from a learning plan perspective, and at the same time, hopefully open your eyes to some elements of your fishing that you might be missing. And then once I finish up this stream, we're going to be talking to Randy next week, and I want to get his opinion as well. And maybe it's going to be the same as mine, maybe it won't. We're not really sure, or I'm not really sure, but hopefully it'll be great. So again, welcome to the stream. If you're listening to this on the podcast, welcome all podcast listeners. And just so you guys know, if you are watching this live stream live on YouTube or as a playback on YouTube, I do offer all of the podcasts as well as some of the audio from the Fish the Moment YouTube videos on the Apple and Spotify podcast apps. You can actually download it and listen to it while you're driving to the lake or while you're at work or whatever you want. So good to see some people joining in. Hans gave a $10 super chat. Thanks so much, Hans. Number 1 fan. Got John, Randy, Gabe, Ernest, Mark, Jacob. How's everyone doing? Hans, thanks so much for the super chat. So excited to get into this topic, and really I'm just going to go through one by one these different lists. I don't have any graphics or things pulled up for this stream. I was actually fishing all day today trying to get more Fish the Moment content, but I want to go through the list of 5 items I have listed out here, some notes I have, and then show you on Navionics and on mapping, as well as some things on Tackle Warehouse with baits that will allow you to improve your fishing based on some of the skills that the pros have. So let's jump over to Navionics here, and we're going to be looking at Grand Lake. This is a really good tournament lake. It's kind of what we're going to be using as our example for how these pros handle tournaments, how they fish. And one thing we're talking about, guys, is tournament bass fishing. That's what Randy focuses on a lot with the Opens, and I kind of gear a lot of my content towards tournament anglers. But these skills don't just apply to tournament fishermen. If you're a weekend angler who just fishes once a month, these skills are still going to be very helpful and something that is going to improve your fishing significantly. So the first reason that pro fishermen catch more fish than you consistently, as well as better numbers and size, is that pros fail fast. What does that mean? Well, basically, pros are able to identify if something is not working, accept that it's not working, and accept the failure of not figuring it out, and then moving on to something else. Let's give an example. So the lake here, Grand Lake, has a ton of different options. We could be fishing offshore structure. We could be fishing back in the coves on boat docks. We could be fishing the back of pockets, the main lake. You could be fishing chunk rock banks, gravel banks. There's a million different options that you can fish when you go to the lake. And one thing that pro anglers are so much better at than a weekend angler is that they know when something isn't working, and they are able to cut bait and stop a certain technique probably 75% faster than your average weekend angler. And that's something that I developed while I'm making all my YouTube videos, is when I go to the lake, time is money for me, and I have to find fish quickly. And so I've been able to get really good at catching 5 or 6 fish for a video every single time I go out to the lake. And the only way I'm able to do that is because I'm able to fail fast. So let's just kind of walk you through a day of how I would do it. And I fished with a lot of pros in practice and in tournaments in the past, so I have observed this up close, and I've also seen it now watching Bass Live, but especially I've practiced with pros, so I can kind of see the process of how they develop patterns. So let's just say that we are fishing around here on the Snake Island area on Grand Lake. If I was going to this area of the lake, what I would be focused on, regardless of the time of year, is trying to determine what section of this area should I be fishing. Should I be out here on the main lake? Should I be in the creeks? Should I be in this backwater bay? Also, I'm going to try to determine what depth of water should I be fishing. 30 feet of water, 10 feet of water, 5 feet of water, or right up against the bank. And I also need to determine the types of cover that I'm going to be fishing, whether that is a chunk rock bank, whether it's these boat docks over here, a bluff wall. And with all of these factors at my disposal, I can't just go through and spend an hour or 2 hours trying every single tactic. Instead, I have to go through an area and I have to spend maybe 15 minutes on each type of combination. So for example, I might spend 15 minutes when I get to the lake fishing down the steep bluff wall. You have 90 feet of water close by, dropping off into deeper water. Now I might spend 15 minutes fishing down this bluff wall, and if I don't get bit, I might try one other bluff wall to see if that's working. So I might come over here, fish a second bluff wall right here, and if I don't get bit within 30 minutes on bluff walls, I'm going to write off bluff walls for the day. Now, are fish on bluff walls? They might be. They might be on bluff walls maybe later in the day. They might be on bluff walls on a different section of the lake. But I can't worry about trying to fish every bluff wall on the lake hoping I get bit, because you're going to waste so much time, and the probability is that there's so many options out there that you're not going to have fish on bluff walls biting every day you go to the lake, even if you caught them there in the past or you have a buddy who caught them or whatever it is. So what I'll do is I'll spend maybe 30 minutes fishing these bluff walls, and then after that I'm going to switch it up. And if I went to a main lake bluff wall to start out, next thing I might do is run all the way to the back of a pocket, way back in here. And I might try to fish 4 or 5 boat docks in shallow water in the back of this pocket. That might take me 15 to 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes. And while I'm doing this, I'm not going to be fishing every single boat dock super thoroughly. I'm going to be making 5 to 7 casts per boat dock, putting the trolling motor on high, and burning to the next boat dock. And I'm going to do that very quickly. And then after that, I might run to another pocket, run over here, run to the back of this pocket, and fish some of these boat docks back in here. And I might spend 45 minutes fishing boat docks in the backs of pockets. And maybe in between, I might be sampling some gravel transitions, some rocky banks with a crankbait as I fish in between there. Let's say I don't get bit doing that. Okay, I've tried bluff walls, I've tried the backs of creeks. That is 2 options that I've tried, and I haven't got bit. Does that mean that they're not on docks in the backs of pockets? No. There probably is a spot somewhere on Grand Lake where you can go catch fish out of the backs of pockets on boat docks. It might be over the back of this creek or way over here or way up over in here. But the thing is that I'm fishing in this area of the lake, and if I was going to run every single stretch of boat docks around this entire lake, the chances of me finding and catching fish is going to be pretty small, because I have to cover so much water, and I'm forcing myself to fish one particular pattern as opposed to letting the fish tell me what they're doing and fishing the moment. So what I'll do then is I will then stop fishing the backs of the pockets, and then I might roll back over here and check some offshore points. So I might roll over and fish a nice offshore point that's sitting here, and I might not even fish it. I might just graph. I might graph an offshore point here. I might graph an offshore point over here, and I might spend 45 minutes graphing offshore points, and I might graph from anywhere from 8 foot of water all the way out to 30 feet of water. And that's the great thing about offshore fishing in my electronics, is that I can graph a lot of different water looking for fish. And I talk about this in a lot of my YouTube videos. So if you want to know how to graph offshore structure, how to identify fish in offshore structure, all those different things, check out my YouTube channel. Go to the Fish Finder /Sonar Videos playlist. You'll find a ton of stuff there. But basically, I'm going to try to experiment for 45 minutes graphing offshore points in various depth ranges. And I'm not going to get too caught up if I don't find fish on offshore points, because most likely, if I'm only graphing for 45 minutes, the chances of me stumbling on a great offshore point is not necessarily that high. Now, let's assume, though, that I do find a fish on offshore points, and I start seeing fish on the graph, I pull up and I catch a fish. That's when I have actually succeeded and I caught something, and that's when I'm going to slow down and I'm going to start checking a lot of points in this area in different depth ranges and start picking apart these areas a little bit more thoroughly. But to get to that point, I had to fail fast to find a productive pattern, to find a productive area. as I mentioned before in our YouTube videos, it's all about just getting that first bite. Once you get that first bite, it clues you in on what the fish are going to be doing. And the best way to generate that first bite is to fish as many different sections of the lake, main lake, back of the creek, middle of the creek, and also trying to fish as many varieties of cover and structure. So points, humps, ledges, that's structure, and then cover is rocks, boat docks, grass, whatever it is. And a lot of times when we go to the lake, it might take me 4 to 5 hours to determine what the appropriate section of the lake, the type of cover, and the type of structure that the fish are on. It's not like I'm going to be able to just go in there and figure it out right away. There's a lot of techniques and tactics I use to kind of dial in this a little bit more with seasonal patterns and bait fish movement, all that stuff. I'm actually going to be doing a seminar on that going forward. I don't want to get into all that right now, but if you guys are interested in how to go find bass based on seasonal patterns, bass movement, stuff like that, I'll be doing a seminar on fishmoment.com here in the next couple months on that. So really, that is the number one key that I find that differentiates pros from the average fisherman. Pros are able to fail fast, fish areas quickly, and determine if the bite is working or if it's not. One of the hardest things, though, is to determine if a bite isn't working. And I know a lot of guys might pull into a pocket and they might see a lot of really nice chunk rock banks or boat docks or whatever, and you might fish boat docks for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. I'm like, man, can't believe I'm not getting bit, especially if you fished the lake in the past. One thing I see is a big issue with weekend anglers is that they don't fish the conditions. They don't fish the day, they fish history. And that's actually the number 2 reason why pros are a lot better than weekend anglers, is that they don't fish history. And we'll get into that here in a second, but I do want to make sure I'm checking all the questions over here, and I also want to go into a couple more things. So let me just make sure everyone's going through and getting all the questions answered. So Rhino Joe says, I'm stubborn to keep trying the same stuff if I think it should work. That's super, super common with a lot of weekend anglers. And K&A Reefing says, I always hear you say this, and I always remind myself that every time out, whether I listen is another story. And yeah, definitely, it's a challenge to kind of make that happen. And another struggle, let's see, Rhino Joe says that he's in a kayak, so it's kind of hard with a kayak to move around, which is definitely an issue. And can we get you to say number 1? Yeah, I got you, Ben. I got you, bent rod guy. So K&A is asking too, what with the season changes, how does that affect how you try to find the bass and where? Are they moving deeper, things like that? And that's what I'm going to be covering in one of my upcoming seminars. There's so much to go into that, and I have a whole structured process that I follow, and to explain it, it's going to takes like 2 hours of like straight instruction to do. So that's why I do it in a seminar format. And so definitely check out that seminar if you want to see that full process. But you know, it's a combination basically of graphing, of understanding seasonal patterns, seeing nature clues, a lot of different factors that I've determined over the years, and you kind of have to put it all together, which is kind of the secret sauce, which is how we do it in the seminars. But one other thing that I see pro anglers do that, or one thing that pro anglers do that a lot of guys don't see, is that these pro anglers are, one, pre-fishing a lot for all their tournaments. Whenever you see a pro angler fishing, they're going out on Grand Lake and they have the ability to go experiment with all these different techniques and areas, and they have 3, maybe 4 days of practice for some of the circuits. Sometimes for Major League Fishing they may only have like a day and a half or 2 days, but that still gives them enough time to experiment and sample different creeks, different sections, and start eliminating patterns as well as developing patterns. Now, some of the best anglers in the world, like your Jacob Wheeler and your Jordan Lee, they're able to quickly dial in patterns, but also if a pattern stops working, they're able to adjust and make changes even during a tournament. And that's one thing a lot of guys struggle with, is that maybe in a tournament practice day, they find that the fish are set up like crazy off these offshore ledges right here, and there's some brush piles or whatever, and they're loaded up there. And they're catching them there on a sunny day when it's bright bluebird skies and no wind. But then the next day, you get cloud cover, you get some rain, some wind, and it gets a little bit nasty outside, and they try to fish for these brush pile fish, and the fish just aren't in them. They're spread out, the cloud cover has dispersed the fish, it makes them really tough to catch. And what you have to be able to do is fail fast in that situation and say, you know what, these brush pile fish are not happening. I need to now go run into the back of this creek or whatever and find some shallow or dirty water and go throw a buzzbait in the cloud cover or the wind to catch fish. And that all comes down to proper practice strategy to find fish in different situations so that you can catch fish not only offshore when it's cloud or when it's sunny and calm, but also have areas to go to when it's cloudy and windy. And this is not as big of a deal for like a weekend angler who's fishing day of, because usually, if you're fishing on a cloudy, windy day, if you spend 45 minutes fishing offshore, you're not going to get bit out here anyways. So you're eventually going to land on a shallow water pattern at some point if you're eliminating your options and keeping yourself open. And, you know, a lot of guys are really keyed in on history, and that's kind of the second thing that a lot of pros don't worry about, is they don't fish history. Now, some pros get into the information trap, where they get a lot of information from locals, and sometimes that's helpful, sometimes it's not. And some of the pros, like a Scott Martin, he's awesome at getting as much information as possible, and he's open about it. He gets as much information as he possibly can, goes out with locals the weeks before the tournament while it's still it's not in the off-limits period. He's doing it legally by the rules. But then he's not just taking the information and going to the lake and fishing. He's using it as information to then build a strategy off of. And he's not just going to go straight to the waypoints that the locals might give him. He's going to adjust his strategy based on the conditions. And that's why he's very consistent and does well in a lot of tournaments. But a lot of pros, they'll just get information from guys and they'll just go fish the waypoints, and they don't know why they're not catching them, especially guys in opens and stuff like that. And they don't think about fishing the conditions and adapting and changing with how the fish are moving. Because most of the time you'll find on a lake, every week or two, the fish are going to be changing. You might find that the first week of, January, these fish might be on this main lake point really well. But then in the second week of February, they might be way back here in the back of this creek on these boat docks. And in between, they've been transitioning in that month down this bank. And if you caught some fish really well here in January, most likely these fish are not going to be here anymore if you come back in February or March. They're going to have made a move somewhere else. So you can't just rely on past information of how people were catching them, or even past information about how you were catching them. Instead, you have to fish the moment and fish the conditions. That's really the number one key, and that's why I named the channel Fish the Moment, is because you have to be able to do that to be a successful angler. Now, doing that is, again, a lot easier said than done, and what I always try to do is, if I'm going to the lake and I have some sort of game plan where I'm catching fish, and I know that I caught them, let's say, last year, throwing a crankbait, a rock crawler crankbait on some 45-degree chunk rock banks. Maybe there's 45-degree chunk rock bank here. And I knew I caught him here last year, and the conditions are the same, weather is the same, water temperature is the same. Most of the time, if I find that's the case, I'll probably give this a good 2 hours of my day. I'll spend 2 hours fishing this pattern to see if I can make it work, because I did it in the past. And I'll kind of ignore my 45-minute rule. I'll spend 2 hours checking it. But if I don't get bit within 2 hours, I'm going to start making some adjustments, whether that's moving further back in the creeks, whether that's moving to a little bit steeper bank. Maybe I need to throw a jig on these banks as opposed to throwing a crankbait. Bait change can be something that's important. Or maybe I have to start going completely, different and going offshore. And that's one thing that I really like to do to avoid fishing history, especially when I'm going to a lake where I have a lot of history. If I go to an area and I feel like I should be getting bitten and I'm not, the best thing you can possibly do is run out of the area where you've caught fish in the past and go to an area where you've never caught fish before. So for example, I've hardly ever fished this creek on Grand Lake right here. I've fished this creek one time before in the fall, but I hardly ever fished this creek. So I fish around Snake Island all the time, and if I came here in November and I wasn't getting bit in all the different ways that I thought I should catch them, what's going to happen is that you're going to be so keyed in on how you caught them in the past that you're going to be running history. And most likely, if you're not getting bit after 2 hours, it means that the stuff that you had history on is not producing, and you now are getting situational blindness. You literally have blinders on, and you're only looking for areas that match what you did last year in November or last week or even the day before. And so what is really helpful to do is remove yourself from this area where you have that comfort, where you have that familiarity, and just run to a brand new creek. Run to an area you've never been to before, and then start fishing what looks the best and the most obvious to you, whether that is a nice rocky bank, whether that's some boat docks, and you're going to kind of restart the process of, okay, I need to spend 30 minutes fishing boat docks in the backs of pockets, 30 minutes fishing chunk rock banks, 30 minutes fishing bluffs, 30 minutes in the back of the creek fishing channel swing banks, whatever it is. And at some point you're going to run into those fish again, because you're now opening your mind and you're letting all of the elements, the nature, the fish, you're letting them tell you what to do, and you're not just sticking to one pattern all day long because you caught them a year ago on a bait because of maybe some random condition or something like that. So that is the number 2 reason why pros are a lot better than the regular average angler. They're able to detach history and detach past information and focus on what's happening on that day. At least the really, really good pros. Some pros are not as good at that as others, and it's harder when you have more experience on the lake. And that's why you see a lot of guys who have fished the lake for years and years and years. They struggle, especially guys who have fished, maybe it was their home lake 15 or 20 years ago. They have all these spots that they used to catch them on 15 years ago, but a lot of those spots aren't that good anymore. And really the only way to utilize that experience effectively is if you've gone back in the last month or 2 months, spent some time on the lake, and determine what's good, what's bad. That's usually how it works, and that's what most of the pros are doing anyways. They get the practice time. So you don't usually see guys have a huge home field advantage unless they're like a super good angler who can also adjust. So like, for example, Jason Christie on Grand Lake. Jason Christie knows everything there is about Grand Lake, but he's also one of the best anglers in the world at adjusting. So even though he knows all these spots, he also knows which spots to pick based on the conditions, and he's not just going to go fish this pocket because he got him here 1 November. He's going to run this pocket because the water temperature is 45 degrees, the shad are back in there, it's this time of year, whatever it is, that's how he's going to determine that strategy. So that is, again, a really, really big key. It's the using your information that you've had in the past to help guide your approach, but you don't necessarily need to use it to dictate exactly what you're going to do. Now, one thing that is helpful about having history is that you kind of have an idea of what types of cover the fish like, what depths of water the fish tend to be in around certain times of the year. So having history on the lake is not a bad thing, as long as you're not literally just running exact banks that you've caught them in the past. That is not normally a recipe for success. Most of the time, what you need to do is have that open mind and fish the banks that are the most, that set up the best for that fishing day, not the ones that you fished in the past. Hopefully that makes sense. So a bunch of questions you guys are rolling in. So let me answer all these questions. I'm glad this is stirring up some conversation. So let's see here. Larry says, really enjoy the videos. Appreciate that. Matt Ross says, awesome. Thanks, Jonny. And Mark says, can't you rule out some areas by the weather conditions? For sure. So one thing that's really important, like, for example, on fishing the conditions, is the wind. That's just one of many, many factors. So let's say that I'm fishing on Grand Lake and I'm fishing in this pocket right here. Well, this pocket right here, if we have a really nice southeast wind, that's going to be blowing into all of these banks in here, stirring up the water, creating some wakes and waves and things like that. And most likely, if I'm fishing in a time when the fish are in this pocket, the bank with the wind blowing in on it is going to be more effective than this opposite bank. Now, the year before, I may have pulled up on this bank and caught 25 pounds, but it was maybe because there was a northwest or a southwest wind blowing straight in this pocket, and these shorelines were calm, and this bank was rocking and rolling. And so, because this bank had the wind a year ago, this is a really good bank last year, but now because there's no wind here this next year and this bank has the wind on the fishing day I'm there, maybe this is the better bank. Even if the structure doesn't look quite the same or whatever it is, that wind direction can definitely influence which banks are going to be better than others. And that's just one of literally dozens of factors that you might consider to determine what areas are good and what areas are not. So that is the kind of stuff that you have to pay attention to, and it's really is fishing the moment, not just fishing history. So another question here. Let's see here. Steve says, hey, you sent me a link last week for one of your videos on cranking in the winter. Appreciate that. No problem. Jessica asks, what baits do you use to get a limit fast? That is basically just depends on how the fish are setting up. Honestly, I don't have like a limit filler bait. I don't think anyone really does. Otherwise, that would be like the best thing in the world on the tournament trail. It really depends on time of year, situation. It's there's no easy way to get a limit. Just in general, fishing is never that easy where you can just say guaranteed here's a way to get a limit. For me, if I had to try to go catch fish, what I would stick with first and foremost would be my football jig, because that's what I have confidence in. I know how to catch fish in a variety of conditions and a variety of situations, but that's because I throw football jigs so much. Now, for some other angler, it might be a crankbait, it might be a spinnerbait, it might be a Ned rig. So it really just depends on what you have confidence in and what you have the knowledge base to use effectively. That's kind of how I would think about that. Let's see here. Smallmouth Jedi asks, this is why I'm not worried about new electronics causing increasing fishing pressure. Many weekend anglers will buy them, but they will not have the patience to utilize them. That is very, very true. A lot of anglers are not going to take the time like what I do when I get to the lake to idle for 3 or 4 hours. If I ever go fishing, guys, nowadays, especially since I do most of my content as offshore content, I'm literally graphing 3 of my 8 hours of fishing at a minimum every single fishing day. And that is my recipe for being very consistent in catching a lot of fish. And it's what is part of my process for fishing the moment. Using my electronics is one of the keys to finding and catching fish quickly. And again, I'm going to be doing a seminar about that here in the upcoming months. But it's that 3 hours of graphing. It's great to say that, and you could even watch the seminar and be like, okay, that's great. But you actually have to want to sit down on your boat and drive your boat for 3 hours and do that. Even if you know what to do, if you're not willing to put that time in, it's not going to be very effective. And that's one thing that these pros do more than anything too, is they spend a ton of time behind their graphs, driving their boat, graphing, looking at spots that a lot of weekend anglers don't do. And that's just that's not one of the things we're going to talk about today, but that is another reason why pros catch more fish than the average angler, is they put more time in and they treat fishing like a job. They don't treat fishing like a hobby. And so sometimes graphing around is kind of not that fun. It feels like work. But again, that's my job and that's a pro angler's job. So putting in the hours of work of just driving around, listening to podcasts while you're doing it, stuff like that, that's the way it can help. Man, I'm getting like inundated with questions, which is good. Let's see here. Keep them coming. Zach's asking, do you have much experience on blueback herring lakes in the fall? Lanier's been throwing me in circles the last few weeks. Win a club classic one weekend, the next weekend can't get a limit. Any thoughts? Zach, that is 100% what we're talking about with that fishing history. On blueback herring lakes, the deal with them is that the fish move so much. And so Grand Lake isn't a herring lake, but if it was, these herring, they could move from this point over here to this point over here to this point over here week to week, to every 2-3 days. And so that is even more the reason you have to be on your electronics, graphing, trying to locate those herring, trying to locate areas where the herring are going to be positioning. And you may have to fish completely different areas day after day because the herring moves so much. And so one day you're going to catch them, one day you're not, if you're just fishing the same rotation of spots every single time. Even if you found fish 4 days in a row, you might catch fish 2 of the 4 days fishing the exact same spots and catch 15 pounds 2 days and catch 1 fish the next days. Just because the weather, the cloud cover, all that stuff moves the fish, and you have to adapt to the conditions because those herring will move deeper, shallower, they'll change position, and you have to adapt to that, and that is exactly what we're talking about here in this webinar, or in the live stream tonight. Todd's asking, do you always load GPS waypoints before you go to different bodies of water, spend research time? Yes, Todd, I always do. This is super critical. Another reason why pros are really, really good. Let me pull up this screen. I'll just kind of give you an idea of what I do, because I have Grand Lake here as one of the lakes I fish. And this is, for example, this is Grand Lake on Google Earth. And let me just show you what I do. This is what I do whenever I go to any lake, is I literally mark this many GPS coordinates. This is just on this part of the lake. I need to do it for, I have them on this part of the lake too. But literally I've gone through and marked so many different things on Google Earth. It's ridiculous. Whether it's rock transitions, ditches, rocks, all kinds of stuff. And the reason I'm doing this is because when I go into a pocket, I want to be able to easily see the key areas. And this is what helps me be more efficient, which is something we can actually talk about here in a second. But I'm able to pull up to these different areas knowing where they are because I've already put waypoints on them. And I know, hey, I want to go fish a couple rock transitions in the back of a creek. Okay, I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I have a ton of them. So that's very easy for me. Or, I want to go fish some stumps. Well, I got stumps. I got stumps all over the place. And I got stumps up this bank and all this stuff. And then maybe I want to go fish. I have a lot of rock because that's a lot of stuff I fish on Grand. But rock is always key for me on Grand Lake. But it just depends on the lake. Sometimes I'm looking at laydowns. Like back in here, I have trees. The stuff I focus on just kind of depends on the season. And that's actually a really great segue because you may be wondering, well, how do I pick all these spots? And I've talked about this a little bit in some of my videos, and you can see me talking about this in my YouTube videos. But also, we do offer on, let me pull this up here. We offer on fishthemoment.com actual GPS coordinates, just like you see here with our Fish the Moment lake breakdowns. So if you go over to fishthemoment.com and then head over to the lake breakdowns page, so fishthemoment.com, lake breakdowns, we literally are now offering GPS coordinates that Randy picks out and I pick out, and we give you detailed area descriptions, keys to fishing the lake, and how to actually download these waypoints onto your fish finder. So before you have to go to the lake, if you don't know what spots to pick out on Google Earth, things like that, we'll send you can actually purchase the waypoints as well as the Google Earth files. So you can pull it up in Google Earth, see what we're looking at, and you can mark more spots that look similar. We give you detailed area descriptions so you can figure out what types of areas we would be looking for and how to duplicate those areas in different sections of the lake. We give you 4 different areas of the lake, and we have these breakdowns for lakes all over the country. So we have winter breakdowns, we have fall breakdowns. Randy's knocking these things out like crazy. And we just transitioned to the waypoints over the maps that we have circles on because it's a lot more precise, a lot more effective. And so we're transitioning all the way over to that. So you'll see we have a ton for December and January, as well as from September through November. And we're getting December, so these winter breakdowns, we're going to be knocking out like crazy. We're also going to be doing personal lake breakdowns if we don't have your lake here. Starting next week, Randy's actually going to be doing personal breakdowns where you can buy a personal breakdown and we'll make the waypoints for you on your lake if it's not available here. One other thing too while we're here is I do have a couple virtual seminars coming up if you guys want to check them out. They get into a lot of the stuff with the seasonal patterns, the approaches, what I'm talking about in this video, how to dial in different patterns. And one of the seminars we're going to be doing, which is actually this Thursday, is the Offshore Winter Seminar. It's going to get you dialed in on all the different potential patterns you're going to face offshore in the winter. So if you've ever wondered, how do I go catch fish offshore in the winter? I'm going to be breaking down literally every single instance I've ever caught fish offshore in the winter, giving a full breakdown of the sonar images, the graphics, the baits, everything. And it is going to be an amazing jumpstart to your winter offshore fishing. And if you fish tournaments, I would definitely sign up for the seminar. It is 100% going to help become a better tournament angler. I'll be talking about offshore fishing on all different types of lakes, natural lakes, if you can fish them when they're open, highland reservoirs, lowland reservoirs, swampy lakes, dirty water lakes, river systems, all that stuff. So definitely sign up for the seminar. There's only 8 spots left. I checked it before the stream, and it is December 3rd, so it's coming up literally this Thursday. And we also have on December 17th a winter crankbait seminar where we're going to be talking about all the different ways to fish winter crankbaits. And this is one of the most effective shallow water patterns as well as an offshore pattern in the winter. And Randy has 30 years of experience cranking in the Ozarks, kind of where winter cranking was born. And I have a ton of experience on the offshore side with winter cranking. So another awesome seminar too that is me and Randy, so you kind of get double bang for your buck. So definitely check out the virtual seminars. And that is that. So let me jump back over to Navionics here, and enough of the plugs. So let's get into... so Jing's asking, what's the 45-minute rule? That was something we talked about earlier. 45-minute rule basically is just spending no more than 45 minutes on a certain pattern. So whether that is, fishing boat docks in the back half of a creek, or fishing main lake bluff walls, or fishing points on the main lake. I'm not going to spend more than 45 minutes on a fishing day in each area of the lake with the same structure and the same cover. So I'm not going to run main lake points in 20 foot of water for 3 hours. I might do it for 45 minutes at the most, and I'm going to change it up. And even like this, I might run main lake points from graph for 5 foot all the way to 40 feet, and I'm only going to do that for an hour, 45 minutes at the most, and then I'm going to go in the backs of the creeks. I'm going to go to the middle of the creeks. I'm going to keep experimenting, and that's how you consistently find fish, and that's one of the things we talked about earlier. Man, there's so many questions coming in. I cannot get to all of these. Let's see here. Kai asked, how do you know if it's best to spend all day patterning fish or when it's just good to get 5 good fish junk fishing? So that is a great question, actually. And a lot of times what you'll find, and it's kind of hard to put together, but like if you go out to this lake, on Grand Lake, for example, and you do the 45-minute rule where you're fishing a bunch of different techniques for 45 minutes, and maybe you catch, especially if you're in a practice day, you might catch one fish fishing boat docks in the back half of a creek, and you then go fish more boat docks for like 2 hours and don't get anything. And then you start doing a new pattern. Maybe you're fishing rocky walls, and you catch a fish in the first 10 minutes fishing rocky walls, and it's like, okay, awesome. Then you run for 2 more hours, you run rocky walls, and nothing's happening, and you're just randomly catching fish here and there. That's when I love to junk fish, and that's usually what happens a lot of times in the fall, as well as in kind of that like post-spawn time of the year when the fish are spread out everywhere. So like September and like May, the fish can be spread out all over the place, and they're not really keyed in on one pattern. What I like to do in those situations is I just try to run as many areas that look good to me as possible. And I don't worry about exactly what I'm fishing, depth range wise, stuff like that. Again, the time I do this is really May and September, maybe even early October. And what I'm doing is I'm literally going to pull up like all these waypoints in the lake. Now I'm just going to go run every single one of them. And I'm just going to literally fish everything. I'm not going to worry about whether it's shallow or deep or anything like that. And if I'm not really dialing in a pattern tournament, for a tournament day or for a situation, I will just spend 5 casts on each one of these spots. I'll pull up, I'll make 5 casts on this point, 5 casts on this point, 5 casts on this dock or this ditch, 5 casts on this stick I marked. I marked a bunch of random crap, but these stumps, I'll make 5 or 10 casts here. And I'm just going to run as many targets as possible if I don't have anything found in practice, and hoping that at some point throughout the day, if I mark enough of these good-looking areas, I'm just going to get 5 bites. So if you're just completely spun out like practice, you don't find anything, the best thing to do is go onto Google Earth, mark as many spots that just look interesting, look good, and then pick up a moving bait like a crankbait, a spinnerbait, a buzzbait, Or maybe if it's like a cloud or a sunny, calm day, maybe pick up like a jig or like flip a beaver style bait and just flip a jig, maybe throw a wacky worm on as many targets as possible throughout the entire day that look interesting, and hopefully you can get 5 bites. And a lot of times it works out because if you can, let's say, spend 5 casts on each of these spots, that might take you no more than 5 minutes per spot. And if you're on the next one really quick, you might be able to hit per hour maybe, let's see here. Let me try to do the quick math. You might be able to hit 10 spots an hour maybe. That might be a little bit much, maybe 8 spots an hour. But if you can do 8 spots over 8 hours, now you're looking at hitting 50 to 60 of these spots a day. And all you need is 5 bites. So if you can hit 50 spots, if you only get bit on 1 out of every 10 of these spots you fish, you have a limit. So that's kind of the idea behind junk fishing, playing the probabilities and just picking an area that maybe you feel comfortable in, maybe you like the look of, maybe you've heard it's good for tournaments, whatever it is. Just run a little bit of everything. And that's how I've done well in so many tournaments, especially if you don't get a practice day. I love doing junk fishing, and sometimes that junk fishing turns into a pattern. You feel like you don't have something going on, but then you realize, okay, I just run this deep dock, this deep dock, this steep bank, and I'm realizing, okay, all these steeper banks, I'm catching fish, and then you can eliminate all the other waypoints and just run all the steep banks, and then you've developed a pattern that maybe wasn't there before the tournament, but now it is during the tournament. That's super, super helpful. Randy Wilson, do you ever, I need to slow down. Randy Wilson, do you ever camp on the spot? I'm getting too excited, guys. I don't know. I like having Randy on, but I also just like talking to you guys. I feel like so much I always want to share, and I only have so many videos and so much time to share it. So I love talking to you guys about fishing. But do I ever camp on the spot? Yes. So sometimes I will camp on the spot, especially if I feel like it is a really, really productive spot where I see a big group of fish and if there's a lot of fishing pressure. So I don't prefer to camp on spots, but like right now I was actually out on this little lake, Lake Swepco today fishing, and I did not catch anything, which is really sad. I was on Lake Swepco, and it's a tiny lake, and there's a million people that fish this lake. And when I'm over here, a lot of times because there's so much fishing pressure, you have to get on one spot and just kind of milk it. And usually there's 3 or 4 spots in this lake that have a big group of fish on them every single year, and usually, or every single season, and usually there's going to be boats on almost all of them. So I'll basically just pick one and just stick to it all day, and if I stay there all day, I'm going to get bit. But that's kind of an exception to the rule on these smaller lakes like this. Usually on a big lake like Grand Lake, I prefer the more run and gun approach. That's always been more productive for me, and I'll hit the same spot 5 or 6 times throughout the day as opposed to sitting there all day long. Let's see here. Oh my gosh, so many questions. And Kay and everything says all the people by this lake are taking screenshots right now. For sure. Hey, I don't care. You guys can go fish all these. Again, there's so many spots here. Even if 10 of you guys went and tried to fish all these spots, you're not going to be able to fish all these spots in a day. So we could all try and knock them out together. Maybe we can do a little group. We can all go try to hit them together one day, because there's too many to fish in one day, for sure. Stuart Carter says, I get analysis paralysis. I need to develop a rough framework and just play around with it. For sure, that's something that gets really hard, is overanalyzing the situation. And that's why I always recommend that 45-minute rule. And if you feel like you're getting spun out, just cut bait and just move. Just leave and go to a new area and start fresh. There's no shame in just kind of pulling the plug and starting fresh, going to a new area and admitting that you've spun out, because everyone spins out. The pros, everybody. Go to a new section of the lake, pick up a bait you have confidence in, and I do that so often in my videos. I go out with the idea of planning, I'm going to go fish a swim bait today, or I'm going to go catch him on a big jigging spoon, or whatever. And I don't catch crap for 4 hours, and I'm forcing a bite, and I'm just you know what? I need to get a video today. I have 4 hours. I'm just going to pick up a football jig, and I'm going to go catch fish on a football jig. And that's when some of my best videos happen. I just go to a new area of the lake, never fished there before, throw a football jig, and I catch him. And that's something that you just kind of have to develop too, is just getting a confidence deal and just going with it and just go to a new area of the lake and find water where that works. So there's so many questions. So I am going to have to leave you guys to maybe answer some of these questions because I gotta get through all this list. Let me see here. Sorry, I am trying to get through everything. How do you get the Google Earth waypoints in your boat? Todd, I've actually made a video on that. You can just type in Fish the Moment Google Earth, and I make a video on how to mark the waypoints, how to transfer them to your fish finder, all that stuff. So it's like one of my better videos. Just type in Fish the Moment Google Earth. You'll be able to find it. It walks you step by step, literally the entire process. Let's see here. So the fifth reason, so there's the third reason. There's 5 reasons the pros are better. I'm back in it. We're back to it. The first is that pros fail fast. The second is that the pros don't fish history. So we've covered both those topics. The third reason that pros are more efficient, they do better than the average angler, is that they focus on their strengths. And a lot of times guys get messed up because they confuse versatility with basically trying to be good at every single tactic. That is not the case at all with fishing. If you look at the best anglers in the world, Jacob Wheeler, Jordan Lee, guys like that, they are versatile anglers, but they are not experts at every single technique. They have strengths while being versatile. So let me explain kind of what I mean by that. So let's just take an example of Jacob Wheeler. Jacob Wheeler might be, there's a lot of things Jacob Wheeler is good at, but let's just say, for an example, Jacob Wheeler has some really good strengths offshore. He can catch him on a drop shot really well, he can catch him on a swim bait really well, he can catch him deep cranking really well, and he's good at fishing a hair jig. Those are his 4 key offshore techniques that he is really good at and he knows really, really well. And he's one of the top in the world at doing those 4 techniques. He might be able to catch him doing a lot of other stuff, fishing a Carolina rig, a football jig, a necker rig, whatever. He's good at flutter spoon. He can catch him on a bunch of other stuff, but he's a master at those 4 techniques. And then up shallow, he might be a master of fishing a spinnerbait, a crankbait, a jig, and a buzzbait. That's where he is a master at. So he has those tactics up shallow, and he has those tactics out deep. Well, what I find with the best tournament anglers in the world is that they spend time perfecting their techniques so that they have a toolbox of maybe 10 techniques that they know very, very well. And they know when it's cloudy and they're fishing a football jig, this is how the fish are going to act, versus when it's sunny, versus when it's windy, all these things. That's how I am with a football jig. I'm the same way with a buzzbait. I'm the same way with a medium diving crankbait. There's several techniques, a frog. I'm very good at, I have a repertoire of maybe 7 to 10 techniques that are my staple techniques that I can always go to the lake and utilize to catch fish. Now, that doesn't mean that I am good at every single technique. I might not be that great at certain techniques. I can go catch fish doing it, but it's not something that I have as like one of my strengths. The nice thing is that I have developed my versatility over the years, just like a Jacob Wheeler or a Jordan Lee, and then I have 3 or 4 strengths up shallow. I have 3 or 4 strengths out deep. I have a few more offshore strengths than shallow strengths, but I still have some. I can still catch them up shallow a little bit. I don't really show myself up shallow. I can still do it every once in a while. I'm not as good at Jacob Wheeler and Jordan Lee as fishing up shallow, but even Randy, but they have the ability to go up shallow and catch him, but they're not going to try every single technique in every single tournament. Instead, what they're going to do is they're going to go out on the fishing day and they're going to say, hey, if I'm going to do well in this tournament, I'm going to utilize one of these 8 to 10 techniques, and I'm going to try to find fish that are biting that way. And they're going to fish to those strengths, the techniques they've developed over time. So if Jacob Wheeler is going to go offshore, he's probably going to be looking for a crankbait bite, a swim bait bite, a hair jig bite, a drop shot bite, just for an example. He might have other strengths. This is just an example. So don't be like, he can do this too. He can do a lot of stuff, but just to give you an idea. And then up shallow, if he's going to go up shallow, he's going to go fish a spinnerbait, a buzzbait, a crankbait, or chatterbait, or a jig, or whatever. One of those techniques. And usually, on pretty much every lake around the country you go to, one of those 8 to 10 techniques is going to produce a tournament quality bag of fish that allow him to do really well in a tournament, top 10. And he's mastered those techniques. Now, the same thing can go for like a Jordan Lee, but his repertoire of strengths is different. He might have 4 offshore strengths and 4 shallow strengths that are different from what Jacob does. Now, the issue that a lot of weekend anglers make, and even a lot of pros on tour that maybe are near the lower bottom of the leaderboard, is that they try to fish all these baits that guys tell them to fish. So they go to the lake and they're like, man, they're biting an Alabama rig like crazy. So they go try to throw an Alabama rig. Or maybe, man, they're biting a jerkbait. And they go try to throw a jerkbait in a tournament and they don't catch him very well. Well, the issue is because they don't understand how fish set up for a jerkbait. What type of banks to fish a jerkbait on. For example, like they might come into this point here and they might say, hey, go fish main lake points with a jerkbait. Well, there's 50 ways to fish a jerkbait on main lake points. First, how deep of diver is the jerkbait? Are you fishing a medium diver, a shallow diver, a deep diver? What line size are you fishing that jerkbait on? That dictates it. What cadence are you going to fish the jerkbait with? What casting angle? Are you out deep to shallow, shallow to deep? Are you casting parallel to this rock wall? Or are you casting out here in the middle because the fish are suspended? Do you need wind to make that bite work? Or will they bite when it's sunny? Maybe you need to throw a different color jerkbait when it's sunny versus when it's cloudy. All those factors can make it so that one guy who's an amazing jerkbait fisherman might catch 20 pounds off this point, and you can go right behind him with a jerkbait and not catch a single fish. And that's the difference between having a strength and just going out and fishing the bait. And so, for example, if you put me on Grand Lake, I can guarantee you that I'm going to be able to go catch a fish on a football jig right now, probably go find a place where I can go catch a limit of fish on a football jig right now and pretty much year-round on Grand Lake. And that's just because I know all the different scenarios to fish a football jig year-round. Same thing goes on with, an Alabama rig. I spent a lot of time learning the Alabama rig. I know how to catch fish in Alabama rig suspended over 100 foot of water and up in 2 foot of water. Or, a medium diving crankbait. I'm great with a medium diving crankbait. I can go catch fish on medium diving crankbait year-round. Just those are some of my strengths. Same thing with like skipping boat docks. I'm awesome at skipping boat docks. Not something I talk about a lot in the YouTube, but I love skipping boat docks, and it's another strength of mine. So these are things that I can use to go catch fish. Now, over time, I've developed those skills. I've developed the football jig. I've developed the Alabama rig, the medium diving crankbait, fishing a jig on boat docks, stuff like that. But it's through hours and years and literally 10, 15 years of experience learning these techniques and learning the ins and outs. So I know in February, I need to be fishing a certain type of area with a medium diving crankbait versus in October or June. I can always catch them on a medium diving crankbait, but the area of the lake, the water clarity I'm looking for, the section of the lake, the type of cover I'm looking for is all different. But I understand the bait and I understand all the changes because I've spent so much time doing it. The moral of all of this story, basically, is that the pros spend so many hours perfecting a certain technique that they know all the ins and outs, and then they're able to use that as a tool to perform in a tournament, and they're confident that they know how to make the adjustments to that bait. And that's why like Jacob Wheeler, Jordan Lee, Brian Thrift, John Cox, those guys, they're always up there in the top because they pick those strengths and they've spent hours and hours and hundreds and thousands of hours perfecting each of those techniques in so many different conditions. Now, if you go out to the lake and, for example, watch a swim bait video from me and try to go catch them on offshore swim baits, the chances of you actually going and successfully catching them on an offshore swim bait bite are probably pretty small your first or second trip because you have no idea how to actually apply it to yourself. Even if I show you the right navionics, maps to throw, all the different stuff that I show in my videos, you still have to get that experience because every day is going to be different. So my recommendation to an angler, especially new anglers or weekend anglers, is try to develop 2 shallow water strengths and 2 offshore strengths. This is something that might take you a year to do, but the way I would recommend doing that is to pick 2 baits that are really, really good for offshore fishing, 2 baits that are really, really, really good for shallow water fishing, and just get really good at fishing those baits, depending on the area of the country and whatever. But just become an expert with them and throw them every single time you go fishing. Always have those baits tied on. so that you know in every condition, this is how I get bit on that bait. And even just take one bait and throw it all day long and just pick that bait. And it doesn't matter what baits you pick. Pick baits that you like, that you feel comfortable with, maybe you know are good on your lakes that catch fish. Just pick those baits and go for them. And like if I was on Grand Lake, if I had to recommend, 2 baits for offshore, 2 baits for shallow, offshore, you need to be throwing a medium or deep diving crankbait. You need to be throwing a football jig. Those are the 2 baits I recommend. If you're fishing up shallow, a flipping jig and probably a spinner bait are going to be your 2 shallow water baits on Grand Lake. Some sort of flipping jig, some sort of spinner bait, and you're going to be pretty solid on Grand Lake year-round. You'll be able to find and catch a winning tournament bag of fish on those baits. There's other baits that work, obviously, but if you just wanted to narrow it down, those are the baits I would throw. And I think a lot of guys do themselves a disservice because they go into Tackle Warehouse, they watch videos on guys showing all these different random baits they throw, watching the tactical bassing guys like that. They give an awesome amount of information, which is great, but you can also get lost in the weeds going and spending hundreds and hundreds of dollars on different baits and not really dialing in one category of bait, one style of bait. Now, one thing I would recommend is if you want to go get really good, for example, at fishing a deep diving crankbait, pick deep diving crankbaits and go buy a bunch of different brands. Buy different depths, buy different colors. Try different variations of that deep diving crankbait. You can still buy a bunch of different baits and try the different styles, but don't also then go have swim baits tied on and also have spoons and also have all these other baits when you're not confident in one category already. You have to be able to be good at one thing first before you try to be good at everything. If you try to spread yourself too thin, it's going to take you 10 years, 15 years to be proficient at these techniques. If you really want to improve and get really good quickly, pick 1 or 2 baits and just really learn them. You're going to get way better, way faster than anyone else. And yeah, you might not be the most versatile, but you're not going to be a versatile angler fishing for a year or 2. It's going to take you 10, 15 years to become a versatile, really good, all-around angler. So pick the baits, the techniques that resonate with you, go for it, and that's what you're going to be doing. That is my recommendation. And I mentioned the football jig, and one thing I really do recommend for you guys is if you're going to try to learn an offshore technique, I would highly recommend getting the Fish the Moment Offshore Jig by Jewel. This is the jig I designed for Jewel Baits, and it is one of the best offshore jigs you're ever going to find. It has a double cable guard weed guard, which is a lot more effective at coming through cover, brush, things like that, standing timber. I hardly ever lose jigs anymore because of that double cable guard. It has a really nice skirt that you can customize, so you have a long skirt that you can trim up, or you can keep it really long if you want to. It has kind of a finesse style on the head, so you can make it a finesse jig, you can make it a long, big profile jig. It's 5/8 ounce, so you can fish it as deep as 35 feet of water, but it also works great in 5 foot of water. And if I was going to pick one bait for you guys to learn offshore, it would be this jig right here. It's an amazing, amazing bait from 5 foot of water to 50 feet of water. And it's so customizable that, honestly, this is, if you're going to learn a bait, you've seen me, you guys know, you've seen me watch them in a video, or you've watched me in videos catching them on this bait. It's not just like I'm, saying, get this bait. Like, I designed this bait after years of testing because I believe in it and I catch a ton of fish on it. And we're actually finally back in stock. We sold out like crazy the first week, and we're fully back in stock. We have like thousands of jigs available. So go check them out. You can see some people have already caught their personal best bass. Awesome through brush and rock piles. Appreciate the reviews, guys. And definitely really good baits, so check it out. And one other thing I want to talk to you guys about with Jewel that's really cool, that I think is cool, is that they have this new thing on jewelbait.com, which is the Fish Tools box. It's this thing for Christmas, basically. I have one right here. It's, one second, I don't know how I'm going to do this. I'll show you this. It's a Fish Tools box. Basically, Jewel put together a bunch of different baits in their in this box, and let me switch over to this other camera, and I actually they let me help put this together, which is really cool. Fish Tools box. It comes like this. There's baits. There's not any baits in this one, but there's baits in it, and it comes with a set of baits, and I've picked them specifically for that December time of year. And this is kind of the Christmas box. It was geared for December fishing, and then it's a subscription box if you guys want to purchase it. And I actually help hand pick these baits every single month from Jewel. With the company, we get together, we pick out the best baits for the season that you guys need, and you'll be seeing me throw all these baits in my videos. And it's cool because you get $60 worth of baits for $35. Since it's coming straight from Jewel, you can literally get the baits for half off because they don't have to go through retail. They don't have to go to Tackle Warehouse or Bass Pro Shops. So if you want to get some really high quality baits at literally half price, just check out the Fish Tools box. It's really cool, honestly, and it's baits that I have high confidence in. They're all made here in America, assembled in Mountain Home. I go to the plant all the time. They have American employees from Mountain Home, born and raised, working there for a long time. So great way to support American company, building everything from scratch, all the materials, everything assembled. So really cool company. So definitely check them out. So that's that. And then also one last plug too before we get into the last thing for the virtual seminars. Just make sure, check out the virtual seminar, offshore winter seminar. Get to go through literally every single potential offshore pattern that I know of you can catch fish on, with Navionics maps, sonar recordings, baits, the best strategies, best conditions, everything. Like, in this condition, go fish this pattern. This condition, fish this pattern. For all different types of lakes, we're going to be super thorough with this. And that seminar is this Thursday, so definitely sign up for it. There's only 8 spots left. I've got a notification. There are 6 spots left. 2 people have already signed up. So make sure you sign up for the seminar if you don't want to miss that. Especially if you're a tournament angler, this is like a must for tournament anglers who fish in the winter. And then also a reminder about the lake breakdowns. You guys know about these. We talked about them earlier. But the lake breakdowns, we gave you GPS waypoints, lakes in the winter, in the fall. Randy is knocking out a ton of lakes in the winter, 40 GPS waypoints you can put straight in your fish finder, area descriptions. You guys know the deal. So let's get back over to Navionics, and let's talk about the last 2. This has taken a lot longer than I was expecting, and I get a lot of we're getting a lot of comments. Oh man, I need to respond to some of these comments. Let's hold up. Let me respond to some of these comments. So just give me a second here. Zach Certain, he says, last question. Do you have much experience ditch fishing? This is a huge winter deal on Lanier. Have you ever made a video on this? Yes, ditch fishing is very interesting. I have made a video on it. If you check out my video on complete guide to contour line maps, I actually talk about lakes with ditches. Let me go over to Lanier just to show you what a ditch is. I didn't know what a ditch was for years, guys. Like, this is a topic where everyone said, yeah, let's fish ditches, and I was like, what is a ditch? And no one would tell me. I was like just a poor little 13-year-old kid wanting to know what a ditch is, and nobody in the BFLs or any of the trails, they would tell me what it is. And I was like, what's a ditch? And literally no one would tell me. And I had to learn on my own. Finally, I figured it out. And I found some fish in a ditch. And they're like, oh, man, you're catching them in that ditch? And I was like, oh, I guess I was. I didn't know that was a ditch, but thank you for telling me now. Now I know what a ditch is. So a ditch, it's very simple, but kind of complicated. It's basically any place where you have deeper water running into a flat area, and it's surrounded on both sides by shallower water. So this right here is a ditch. Basically, it's a little creek channel running into a shallow area. This is also a ditch right here. Here is a ditch, a ditch, a ditch. As you can see, there's a lot of ditches. You could also, some guys call like these creeks, like the middle of the creeks, they call them drains or ditches. People are bad with naming stuff in fishing, but this could be considered a ditch right here. This is a ditch. This is a ditch. Here's another ditch. Basically, the bait fish in the winter get in the center of these things, and they kind of hang out here, and you can catch them on underspins and spoons, stuff like that. I'll be doing a bunch of videos about fishing ditches on Table Rock Lake here at some point in the near future. So we'll be talking about ditch fishing. And I'm also going to go, in ditches on Lake Lanier, that's like the Lake Lanier ditches, but you can also go to like Sam Rayburn and you can do grass ditches. You may have heard this. If you go to like Veach, am I in Veach? I'm not in Veach. If we go to Veach, basin on Sam Rayburn. Like, this is a ditch right here. That little thing right there where it cuts in, that's your ditch. Give you a few more ditches. Sometimes ditches can be like way back in the back of here. So like this is technically a ditch right here where that channel swings in. I've talked about it in that video before. You can just check out the video, Complete Guide to Contour Maps. I explain what a ditch is, and I give you like illustrations, and I spent like 35 hours in that video. So just type in Fish the Moment contour map explanation or topo map explanation, and you'll find that. Hans, are you gonna upload a lake breakdown for the Gray? I can definitely do that. Yes. Have you ever fished Lake Cumberland? I have not, but Randy has. So if you want to check out the lake breakdown, actually, Randy does he's done Cumberland for fall and the winter, and he's like always finished in the top 30 out of like 200 boats in all the FLW tournaments that are out there. He loves Cumberland. He's very good at it. So I have not fished it personally, though. Austin says, if I sign up for the class on the 3rd, will I be able to watch this anytime, or will it just be in that moment? I send a recording of the seminar, the webinar, to everyone who signs up. So even if you can't sign up that day, that's the seminars here, even if you can't watch it that day, then I'll send over the recording so you can watch it back, and it'll be a recording you can watch as many times as you want. So once it's over, you can review it for 10 years if you want, and you'll have the seminar. It'll always be there for you, even if you can't make it day of. Yep. Okay. Man, there's so many questions. Let's see here. Oh, man. Okay. I don't know which... How are you liking your live scope? There's a question. Loving the live scope. I'm making a video about it here this week, and it'll be like live scope 101. I was very frustrated with my live scope today because I was seeing fish all over it and could not get them to bite, and I don't really know why. I was talking with the guys at the Bass Tank, trying to figure out why we couldn't get them to bite, and I had recordings, and I was sending them to like my friends. I was like, why are these fish not biting? Like, they should be biting. And so sometimes live scope is frustrating because you see the fish and you can't get them to bite, but I'll be making videos, a lot of videos, going forward, comparing live scope to 360 imaging, all kinds of stuff. The 101 with the live scope, best applications, all the crazy stuff. So you guys are going to love those videos. I think they'll be good. Let's see here. And Randy says, how about a coupon for jewel baits? That's a great idea. Let me get on that. I'll get on that for you guys. A coupon code. I will get on that for you. Cool. And one more question. Let's see here. Actually, there's so many. There's so many questions. I can't get through them all, guys. I'm freezing up. Okay, we're just gonna go back into the list. So let's jump into reason number 4. So we've talked about 3 reasons so far why pros are a lot better than your average weekend anglers. The first is that they fail fast, and if you guys haven't seen this part of the live stream, you can actually watch it back live or watch it back after it's posted on YouTube, so you can watch back the full recording, and you can listen to it on the Apple Podcast and the Spotify Podcast app. So you can download this podcast and you can listen to it. So we've talked about pros fail fast, they focus on their strengths, and they don't fish history. The fourth reason why pros are a lot better than your average weekend angler is they're more efficient. And what I mean by efficiency is twofold. First, pros are literally 5 times better at casting than any weekend angler. What I mean by like better at casting is not just like, oh, they can, cast a little bit better. Like literally almost every pro on tour, if they want to, they can put a bait. If they're sitting on this boat dock, they're going to be able to put a jig all the way underneath this boat dock, skipping it, and have it come out through the other side on... Oh, I'm not even showing the right screen. Give me a second here, guys. Sorry. I am showing the wrong thing. Here we go. So, literally, they're going to be able to skip a jig from this side of the boat dock all the way through the other side of the boat dock over here, first cast almost every single time. They're also going to be able to go down a bank with their trolling motor on high, so 8 out of 10, and be able to keep that trolling motor going and place a bait with quiet precision right on the spot, right next to every laid on log while moving at 3 miles an hour. So they're going to be able to put that bait perfectly, no splash, reel, make another cast. The ability to hit targets every single time without thinking about it, being able to manipulate your trolling motor well, being able to cover water quickly and make accurate casts is going to put 3 to 5 extra fish in the boat on average on a good fishing day every time you go out. So the ability to cast well, the ability to cover water quickly while being still efficient and casting well is one of the main advantages that pros have over a weekend angler. And you could be fishing the exact same bait, the exact same pattern, the exact same deal. And if you can't cast as well as a pro or maneuver your boat as well with your trolling motor, you're going to be at a 3 to 5 fish deficit to that pro every single time you go to the lake. So, to improve on this, one of the big things I can recommend is if you're serious about your fishing, go in your backyard and practice your casting. I have a bunch of videos on my channel. Just type in Fish the Moment casting instruction of how to get better at casting, how to improve your actual technique, how to practice casting. I have videos on all of that. And I used to be, I won the Casting Kids National Championship twice. And I don't know if that many people know about that, but I was a Casting Kids National Champion twice. The first time I won it, I was 8 years old. I was at the Bassmaster Classic and actually casted on the floor of the Superdome. And this was the old Superdome before Hurricane Katrina back in 2003. So I was on the floor of the Superdome casting in the circle where the boats for the Bassmaster Classic go in a big circle. And basically I was casting at a target. One second here. I'm going to pull up my screen here. There we go. You can see me now. So I was casting at this little target and a little Berkeley jig on a Zepco 33, whipping it around. And I won that Casting Gauge National Championship. You had to go through like a qualifier and a state championship, a national semifinals, then a final. It was like a whole deal. And that was kind of cool. And that's how I got my start in fishing. And so I have always been really good at casting. That's what I was known for when I fished in the junior tournaments, stuff like that. Even, when I was getting into, I used to do cast-offs at the Bassmaster Classic against all the Mercury Pro teams. So you may have seen me back in the day. I was casting against Hank Parker and like Byron Velvick back in the day, Randy Howell. You guys probably know some of these guys. And they would basically put me out there and they're like, hey, here's this Jonny kid. He's the casting kid. And I would cast and I would beat all the pros at casting. So that was like my gimmicky thing that I used to do. And now I'm fortunately now known more for fishing than just casting, but I do want to get back into the casting instruction because it's kind of cool. Let's see here. Let's transfer back over here. So I don't know if you guys really cared about that, but regardless, that's one thing is the efficiency there. But the other thing about efficiency is that pros are going to be able to, kind of like we talked about earlier, go through these spots. Like I put a point here, a point here. They're going to be able to go through this area. They're going to make the best cast at the best angle, right on target, first or second cast every single time. Because they understand how the structure is laid out. They understand with the wind position, the wind angle, where the fish are going to position, all these different factors. And their bait is going to be in the strike zone on almost every single cast. One thing I see a lot of guys do is they might slop through an area, maybe fishing down a bluff wall like this, and they might put their boat over here out in the middle of the lake, and they might make cast straight in on the bank, just like that. And that's where they're going to make their cast. And this is going to basically make their bait stay in the strike zone for like maybe 5 to 6 seconds out of the cast. The rest of the time it's going to be out of the strike zone because you're on the steep bank. The bank is sloping. Those fish might be sitting in 15 feet. Well, 15 feet of water might only be, a 2-foot section of your cast. After that, you're going to drop into deeper water, and you're going to be inefficient. Where a pro angler is going to know those fish are in 15 feet of water based on their practice and based on dialing in their patterns. They're going to put their boat parallel to this bank, and they're going to cast right down in that 15-foot zone and keep their bait in the strike zone 90% of their casts rather than 10% of your cast like most weekend anglers will. And this is just one of many, many examples of how pros are more efficient. Pros are also more efficient at dialing in boat dock fishing or fishing on a point or fishing offshore structure, whatever it is, pros are able to dial in what the key cast is in the key section a lot better than the weekend angler based on experience and also understanding the patterns. And that's one thing I'm going to be talking about a lot more in my videos, guys, is actual boat positioning and casting angle. And one thing that's really cool, I got a drone, and I'm actually able to put the drone up in the air while I'm fishing and show you the exact camera angle or the exact angle of how I'm casting, how I'm setting up against the bank. And a lot of my videos going forward, I'm going to be keying in on the patterns on the casting angle and improving the efficiency aspect, because I wish I could just make a video on efficiency in general, like how to improve it, and it's very technique specific, but I'm going to be doing that going forward in my videos, and I'm kind of dialing in the videos a bunch. I'm going to be dialing in a lot more to give you more information. I have a whole list actually here. I'll give you guys like a little snippet. I won't show you the whole thing, but I got a little list here. I got the 10 forces of fishing, all the different things, and I actually create like storyboards for my videos now where I'm like checking off, like making sure all the info's in there so I don't miss anything. I used to just kind of make sure I had stuff in there, but now I'm like very intentional about getting everything in there. And I have a offshore winter crankbait video coming out that I am so excited about, that I think you guys are going to love, where I'm going to be talking about literally everything you ever would want to know about a pattern. It's going to be in there with drone footage and everything. I'm so excited about it. You guys have no idea. So that's what I'm working on recently, is trying to up the quality of the videos. Let's see here. Let's go over here. Okay. The last thing that pros do that most weekend anglers don't is they adjust to fishing pressure. So we've talked about all 5 elements now. The first is the pros fail fast. Second is that they don't fish history. The third is they focus on their strengths, not necessarily just being versatile, but focusing on their strengths. Next is they're more efficient. That's the fourth one. And then the last one is they adjust to fishing pressure. So what I mean by adjusting to fishing pressure is that when you go out in the lake, a lot of times in a certain area, this is very annoying with all these pins. Let me get this other thing going. Let me get Navionics pulled up. There's so many pins. It's driving me crazy. So let's say you're fishing on Grand Lake and you get into an area of the lake that you found a bunch of fish in. And it's tournament day. It's a Saturday. Or maybe there's a tournament going on while you're on the lake. You're not in the tournament, but there's other tournament anglers fishing, so there's still fishing pressure. Well, maybe you're fishing this area of the lake and you know there's a bunch of fish here and you want to fish this area, but for whatever reason, the fish aren't biting like they were during the middle of the week or the last weekend when there wasn't a tournament, or they're not biting like they were on your practice day. Now tournament days come around. And maybe when you were here on your practice day or the week before or during the week, there was one boat fishing in here with you. Well, now on a Saturday, there might be 10 boats fishing around here. And having 10 to 15 boats in this area means, one, every good stretch of bank is going to be getting beat up by fishermen, both with fishing lures casting in there, plus trolling motor noise, plus engine noise. And that's going to not necessarily cause the fish to stop biting, but it's going to cause them to act very differently. And what I mean by that is these fish will literally stop eating certain baits, they'll stop feeding on certain banks, and they might reposition. So, maybe you were catching them really well off of this point in these bushes in your practice day, but then after the morning, 7 dudes have flipped these bushes, and maybe those fish got really tired of all the trolling motor noise and all that stuff, and they've moved out, and maybe they're setting up now a little bit deeper off a little brush pile out here. Or maybe they're still hanging in the bushes, but they've tucked up deeper in the bushes. So you actually have to flip way further back in the bushes to get to places where other anglers aren't casting. Or maybe you need to fish a bait that other anglers aren't fishing. Maybe you have to flip a little drop shot rig in the bushes on a lighter line, 12-pound test. It's a scarier way to catch them because you're going to get hung up potentially and break off. But if everyone else is flipping a jig or a creature bait, by flipping a little drop shot with a 4-inch or 6-inch straight tail worm, maybe you can get some extra bites because those fish haven't seen that bait. And pros are so good at adjusting to fishing pressure. And that's something I'm not even that great at. I fish during the middle of the week most of the time now just because I don't want to deal with the fishing pressure and how it changes the fish's mood. And what happens with fishing pressure in general is that the way that you have to adapt depends on how many boats are in the area, the time of year, all these different situations, and you almost have to have this concept that when you go to your practice day, I found fish in a certain pattern, but invariably that pattern may change based on the fishing pressure, and you have to predict how that pattern might change. Whether it's catching fish on, let's say, these boat docks. Instead of maybe catching these fish on boat docks on a jig like you did in practice, you may have to go to a shaky head. And even though you're still fishing the same docks, you might have had your practice day bait was a jig, but your tournament day bait has to be the shaky head, and you have to be able to quickly make that adjustment tournament day. A lot of times guys will go through this area, and they may have crushed them in practice, but what happens is that in tournament day, it's getting pressured. They go through there with a jig, they don't get bit, and they leave, and they're like, man, I'm not getting bit. These spots are terrible. But a lot of times, it's not that the fish have moved or that anything's, like the fish have disappeared. It's just that maybe 3 other boats have already fished the stretch of boat docks before you got there, and they're all throwing jigs. And maybe the first guy caught a couple fish off a jig, but then after that, the fish got really conditioned. So you need to then go to a wacky rig worm, a Neko rig, something different, give these fish a different look to get the bites. And that is so key with any sort of tournament angler, learning to adjust to fishing pressure. And I think that's probably the most overlooked aspect of really good tournament anglers. It's something I don't have a lot of experience on, and I'm not an expert on. I'm not going to even pretend that I'm an expert on that. And that's something I feel like the guys like Jordan Lee, Jacob Wheeler, Brian Thrift, they're even better at that than almost anything else, and that's like the most underrated element of a pro angler is that they can adjust to the fishing pressure. So that's something that it takes time to figure out, but one of the things I always do is I'm always looking when I'm fishing at, one, where are people fishing? Not because I want to go fish their areas. Most of the time I kind of know what's going on anyways, but I want to see what spots guys are rotating, how often they're fishing them, and what baits they're throwing. So I want to see, are they throwing a jig? Are they throwing a crankbait? Not to steal their bait, but to do the opposite. I want to throw something they're not throwing. So I will actually buzz by people, not to steal the spot, not to steal their bait, but to say, okay, are they fishing the spot the right way? Are they actually paralleling the bank, or are they casting straight on like I talked about earlier? If they're casting straight on the bank, they're not being very efficient, and I could come behind them with the same bait and still catch more fish. Same thing as if they're throwing a crankbait, and maybe I see 3 guys throw a crankbait on a bank. Maybe I can come behind them with a jerkbait or a little Ned rig and pick up some fish because those fish haven't seen that bait in a while. So those are little kind of nuances, little small things that can really help dial you in and catch more fish. And it's just being observant and paying attention. Phil says, do you keep binoculars in your boat? No, I just drive straight past people as close as possible. Usually I try to at least get one boat wake to go in their boat. That's my strategy. If they're not hugging the butt seat by the time I run by them, I have not been effective. That is a joke, by the way. No, I just kind of try to pay attention. I'm not like, I don't like to be that guy where I'm like driving around and I try to not put my hand by my graph because I don't want people to think I'm stealing their spots. I'm very self-conscious about that. But like, I might even, sometimes if there's a bank I really want to fish, I've done this before, which is hilarious. But like if there's a bank where I know it's just loaded, I will pull up on a bank that's not that loaded and I'll do like the little peek like behind the shoulder, like look at them and just see like, what are they doing? Because I want to get on that bank later in the day and I want to know what not to throw. And it's just strategy. I'll just pull up on the bank. I know I'm not going to get bit on, but if I can get an extra fish because I know what bait not to throw here, it's going to be worth my time wasting 10 minutes fishing this bank. And it's just that gamesmanship, that tournament strategy stuff. There's little stuff like that can go a long ways in tournaments that a lot of guys do. They don't talk about. That's like the little secret stuff that most people don't really talk about. So, and Kyle says, "Stop giving my secrets away." Sorry guys, I probably giving away some secrets here, but that's what we do at Fish in the Moment. We give away some of the juice. If you think we give away juice in the live streams, I'm telling you guys, check out the seminars, Fish Moment seminars. We give away even more juice in the seminars. We can't give it all away because we need to be able to keep the lights on, me and Randy. We really appreciate all the support, guys. You guys give us on fishmoment.com, doing the seminars, getting the lake breakdowns. All of these things help us so much to be able to put out the free content that we provide. We try to put out as much great free content as possible. These are the things, though, that really help drive the business and help allow us to keep doing what we're doing. So if you want to support the channel, easiest way to do it is just go on, pick up a lake breakdown, or maybe go over to a webinar. Check out a webinar, purchase or sign up for one of these. It really helps us out if you enjoy the content. Also check out, we have the offshore fishing playbook here. I have my ultimate rod guide, which is like an awesome deal that no one ever sees, but this is like one of the coolest things I ever made. It's basically gives you, I'll show you like real quick right here. It gives you like a breakdown of what rods I use, the actions, the bait size, as well as the recommendations on what brand of rod to use. With price points, direct links, and I actually give you the number of applications I use, and I list the rods 1 through like 6 of all the rods I use, all the applications. It's a super cool deal. So like things like that, it's $20, not a big deal, but it really helps support the channel, helps us keep doing what we're doing. And a couple other ways, if you guys do want to support the channel, we do have a merch sale going on, 20% off all the Fish the Moment merch. So you can check that out. We also, if you want to go over to support Fish the Moment on fishthemoment.com, you can join our Patreon page, which is just a small monthly donation. And if you use our Tackle Warehouse link and literally just click on the Tackle Warehouse link like this, and then just bookmark the page when you're on Tackle Warehouse. Just bookmark the page. Every time you use Tackle Warehouse, then we'll get a small percentage of the profits of those sales. It really helps us out. And it's just something easy to do. Just bookmark the page, use it every time. You never have to think about it again, and you're helping support Fish the Moment. If you don't do anything else, really helps out a lot. So, that's pretty much it. I saw some people checking out the Fish Tools box. Thank you for doing that. Really appreciate it. And I don't know what Rob Fish says with cheater, but hopefully he's not talking to me. He's talking to me about the looking over my eyes. Again, I'm not looking for their baits, and I normally know where the fish are. Hope you guys understand. It's just the way it's called gamemanship. You have to play the game. It's like when you're playing poker. You're not looking at the person's hand, but you're looking at their body language and stuff like that. It's kind of similar. It's just the way it goes, and it's something that all pros do. If they say they don't do it, then they're not telling the truth, because it's how you play the game, and you have to use every potential avenue to your advantage. So, anyways, that is the deal for this live stream, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed. We have a ton of people on, which is awesome. I'm going to be posting this live stream to the podcast app. So if you guys do want to listen to this again when you're driving to the lake, maybe to get a refresher, definitely go over to the Apple Podcast app. Go to Fish the Moment Podcast on Spotify and on Apple iTunes, and just download the podcast. I also put a lot of my YouTube videos up there, so like if I talk about baits and stuff like that, and you don't have time to watch the video during the week, you can just listen to me talk about different baits, strategies, stuff like that. And it's a great way to just kill time while you're driving to the lake. So that is it, guys. Thanks for checking out this week's live stream. Randy will be back next week from Lay Lake. We'll do a little recap of his open, and I want to get his opinion on these 5 reasons why pros might be better, or his perspective on it. I know he has a lot of thoughts on fishing pressure. I kind of want to get his opinion on that, because that's another thing we're not really talking about, is like, how does he handle fishing pressure? Maybe he'll weigh in on my whole peeking at people's baits sort of thing to know what not to throw. Maybe he's like, don't do that. I don't fish tournaments. I haven't fished tournaments since I was like 21, so it's been 5 years since I fished a tournament. So I haven't really used these techniques in 5 years, so technically I haven't really been messing with anyone. But now I'm telling you guys all this, so I guess I'm hurting, or I am instigating the problem. I don't know. Whatever. You guys are going to be respectful, I know. And again, appreciate all the support, guys, as always. You guys are an amazing community, amazing guys who watch the videos. Really appreciate it. Always appreciate the comments and the likes in the video. And the videos I have coming up, guys, you guys are going to love them. I'm putting a lot of more effort into the videos. I've got some stuff figured out with people helping on different projects, things like that. So I'm able to just focus solely on content creation. So I was on the lake today. I'm going to be on the lake 2-3 days a week, and then editing my butt off. So really excited of all that, and hope everyone stays safe during the holiday season. Just make sure to stay on the lake, stay fishing, and hopefully you guys are not snowed in somewhere up north. And If you are, hopefully these videos are helping you out. So anyways, happy holidays, guys. We'll be seeing you next week. You'll be seeing me in videos. But